I wrote some words over here and I just titled it Journey Towards Peace. Peace both within and without. As a little boy, a man on the cross fascinated me. In the heat of the Middle East, I relished the carols of the snow. As a teenager, Hindu hymns moved me. Tales of the Sufi mystics enamored me. These hymns and tales touched my heart. Even if I did not grasp their meaning, it would be only much later I would discover Rumi, who said, "The lamps are different, but the light is the same." I was an eager student of Islamic studies. I spent much of my time wrestling with the texts, with the salvation of non-Muslims, the fate of Mother Teresa, the unequal testimonial and inheritance laws, the draconian chop-chop penalties, the hijab, the beard, and of course, for any devout adherent of faith, masturbation. With my great and profound teachers, I found answers to some of my questions. I learned that monotheists who did good works would have their reward with Allah. I learned the beard was not necessary, and that thing you do with your hand was much ado about nothing. Over time, there was a shift in my tradition. Unequal testimonial laws that equated 2 women with 1 man were deemed suggestive instead of prescriptive. The head cover was viewed as optional instead of necessary. Each time I would find an answer consistent with my core values of liberation and inclusion, I would feel a sense of deep relief. Yet my tradition did not liberate me on the issue of sexual orientation. It took me a long time to let go of the strictures of my specific tradition to go back to my younger days, when I would listen to the hymns of other faiths without a worry or a care. The Jewish faith salvaged me to view same-sex unions as holy. I discovered how small I was to think of the fate of Mother Teresa. I still remember asking Sheila, a good church-going Christian, with whom I would sell chocolates and ice cream at Birdie's Chocolates, about my fate when Jesus would come rescue her and the other faithful Christians at world's end. She immediately replied, "He would save all those who do good, without any mention of religion or sexual orientation." That was when my heart thumped. The spirit in me met the spirit in her. It is this radical love and inclusion which has been part of my core values, but covered with heaps of tradition that I finally reconnected with. As we sing at Southminster Steinhauer United, I drew the circle wide, wider than ever before, to include not just monotheists, but all. I reconnected with the Quran when it says that the differences among people are just there so that we can know one another. I reconnected with the Prophet beyond the specific 7th century laws, when he taught that the best among you is one who loves the children of Allah. I reconnected with the Sufi mystics who taught of love, relentless, radical love, beyond the pleasures of flesh, beyond the vapid sentimentality. I understood that it is only love that can bring peace both within and without. But to love is easier said than done. It is easy to give in to fear, to demonize the other. It is much more difficult to love the other, which perhaps explains why we resort to aggression, to obliterate what we are afraid of. But if we are to work towards peace, I feel we ought to learn that, and this is my feeling, that faith-based rituals are hollow and meaningless. All these feel-good, pat on the back, sentimental ceremonies mean nothing unless we recognize that each and every one of us has the ability to rise above ourselves, to recognize our tawheed, oneness, that as children of God, we are one, to include even if we have been shunned, to love even if we have been hated, to forgive despite our facing oppression, to do what is right and just without expecting the same in return, to stand by what is right and just even if it be against our own people, to become truly inclusive, to unconditionally and selflessly love one another. For it is only then we can be at peace, and it is only then we can have peace.
Sorry. I wish those words had been heard by the people who have perpetrated such terrible atrocities through history. They might have had an effect. There are so many terrible events that we're remembering through history. And along the process of me meeting Audrey and her taking me into her part of her life, she sheltered me in her basement for a couple of months and gave me a place to live. And I met through Audrey, people would be walking down the street and looking at the Genocide garden. And through her and actually through Anne, who's sitting here from Beth Ora, I met Seth, who came and spoke at Beth Ora, Temple Beth Ora as well, and other people who have survived. And through my life, I've met people who survived the terrible atrocities that we're remembering. And every one of these genocides, so many met their ends mercilessly. And the few survived. Miracles happening in their surviving. So I want to read one short story from Hasidic Tales of the Holocaust by Yafa Eliach about one kind of survival. And there were so many different ways that people survived in miracles. And I read about survival because so many died, but in every single instance of Holocaust that we're remembering, the people that were victimized as a whole continued and went on, and the people also survived. It was a dark, cold night in the Janovska road camp. Suddenly a stentorian shout pierced the air. "You are all to evacuate the barracks immediately and report to the vacant lot. Anyone remaining inside will be shot on the spot." Pandemonium broke out in the barracks. People pushed their way to the doors while screaming the names of friends and relatives. In a panic-stricken stampede, the prisoners ran in the direction of the big open field. Exhausted, trying to catch their breath, they reached the field. In the middle were two huge pits. Suddenly, with their last drop of energy, the inmates realized where they were rushing on that cursed dark night in Janovska. Once more the cold, healthy voice roared in the night, "Each of you dogs who value his miserable life and wants to cling to it must jump over one of the pits and land on the other side. Those who miss will get what they rightfully deserve. Rat-a-tat-tat!" Imitating the sound of a machine gun, the voice trailed off into the night, followed by a wild, coarse laughter. It was clear to the inmates that they would all end up in the pits. Even at the best of times, it would have been impossible to jump over them. All the more so on that cold night in Janovska. The prisoners standing at the edge of the pits were skeletons, feverish from disease and starvation, exhausted from slave labor and sleepless nights. Though the challenge that had been given them was a matter of life and death, they knew that for the SS and the Ukrainian guards it was merely another devilish point gained. Among the thousands of Jews on that field in Janovska was the Rabbi of Bluzhov, Rabbi Israel Spira. He was standing with a friend, a free thinker from a large Polish town whom the rabbi had met in the camp. A deep friendship had developed between the two. "Spira, all of our efforts to jump over the pits are in vain. We only entertain the Germans and their collaborators, the Askarias. Let's sit down in the pits and wait for the bullets to end our wretched existence. said the friend to the rabbi. My friend, said the rabbi, as they were walking in the direction of the pits, man must obey the will of God. If it was decreed from heaven that pits be dug and that we be commanded to jump, pits will be dug and jump we must. And if, God forbid, we fail and fall into the pits, we will reach the world of truth in a second later. After our attempt, so my friend, we must jump. The rabbi and his friend were nearing the edge of the pits. The pits were rapidly filling with bodies. The rabbi glanced down at his feet, the swollen feet of a 53-year-old Jew ridden with starvation and disease. He looked at his young friend, a skeleton with burning eyes. As they reached the pit, the rabbi closed his eyes and commanded in a powerful whisper, "We are jumping!" Then they opened their eyes and they found themselves standing on the other side of the pit. "Spiro, we are here, we are here, we are alive," the friend repeated over and over again while warm tears streamed from his eyes. "Spiro, for your sake, I am alive. Indeed, there must be a God in heaven. Tell me, Rabbi, how did you do it?" "I was holding on to my ancestral merit. I was holding on to the coattails of my father and my grandfather and my great-grandfather of blessed memory," said the rabbi, and his eyes searched the black skies above. "Tell me, my friend, how did you reach the other side of the pit?" "I was holding on to you," replied the rabbi's friend. Based on a conversation of the Grand Rabbi of Bluzhov, Rabbi Israel Spira, with Baruch Singer, January 3rd, 1975.